The Path of Exile Mayhem event is upon us. This is an event that we haven't seen for quite some time. What Mayhem is, if you aren't aware, is simply a one-week event where we're going to be having tons and tons of difficult encounters in every single map, and those encounters cycle each hour. Each event can have anything from 20 Rogue Exiles, 20 Strong Boxes, 20 Invasion Bosses, 10 Breaches, 20 Tormented Spirits, or 20 Harbingers. And what this means is that there is going to be an insane increase in difficulty in each of these zones depending on what you get. You're going to see all kinds of crazy things like being jumped by multiple invasion bosses at the same time. You're going to be fighting bosses with like multiple spirits in them, probably 5, 6, however many spirits can be maxed into them. Leveling is going to be insanely quick with zones having 20 strong boxes or having 20 harbingers summoning infinite amounts of enemies. And also there are some cool tips and tricks that I'm going to give you on things like how to farm a tabula very easily early on in the league, among other things. Now there is a lot to go over, so let's begin with my build of choice for the Mayhem event, which is Poison Blade Vortex Assassin. Hey there gamers, if you're enjoying my content, make sure to like this video. It's the best way to get YouTube to promote my content to more people, and it helps me out quite a bit. And also, over 80% of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. So if you want more content like this in your feed on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this. Now without further ado, let's get back into it. Alright boys, so my build of choice is going to be the Poison Blade Vortex Assassin. This is the character that I used when I made the original Poison Blade Vortex Assassin guide. It's got all of the same gear that you can find in the POB. This is going to be my personal choice and what I'm going to be playing for the Mayhem event. Now the reason for that is I think that Mayhem League, you really shouldn't be doing like experimental builds or potentially weaker builds. This event is only a week long, and if you intend on being able to get to like level 95 and you're wanting to push up to get the different rewards that you can get, you really want to be playing something that is a pretty solid character. Now the reason I particularly chose Poison Blade Vortex Assassin is that it has excellent clear as well as excellent bossing. I think both of those things are going to be very, very important, because going over the list of things that we're going to be seeing in the actual Mayhem event, we've got Rogue Exile, Strong Boxes, Invasion Bosses, 20 Invasion Bosses in a single zone, 20 Tormented Spirits, or 20 Harbingers. Now the two out of those that I'm worried about and are the main reason that I'm choosing Blade Vortex Assassin is the 20 Invasion Bosses as well as the 20 Tormented Spirits. Now, I'm not 100% certain how the Tormented Spirits are going to work, but I know that getting randomly jumped by multiple invasion bosses in a scary map is going to be absolutely ridiculously spooky. So we need something that can do good single target damage, has pretty solid survivability, has really good clear, and also can do all of that without very much gear. Now, I don't think that you're going to be able to get cold iron points too easily, although we are going to be getting a lot of drops in this league, but I do think that the obliteration wands that you can use in the budget version of this build are going to be enough to get through the entirety of the game. So the idea here is that most of the gear on this character is very easy to get. We're not going to need the Devouring Diadem, we can use obliteration wands, and a random 6-link chest piece is more than enough for this build to clear all of the content of the game. So the reason why I chose it for this, if you're wanting to get like a Corralito signature, it may be a little hard to come by early on, but you can actually just go ahead and grab Perfect Agony if you don't want to use Corralito's signature. You may need a little bit more poison chance in your build, since this does give us 25% chance to poison. But that's pretty much all that you have to worry about. Corralito's isn't that expensive, it's normally pretty common, and the rest of these uniques, save the Cold Iron points and the Devouring Diadem, are pretty easy to come by. So this is going to be my #1 choice. This is what I'm going to be playing. If you want to see me actually playing the Mayhem League, head over to twitch.tv/BigDucks. I'm going to be playing this build. We're going to be starting a few minutes before the Mayhem League actually begins, so make sure that you come and head over there and hang out with me and the boys. And also, if you do want the full details on this build, there's going to be a link up in the top corner right now that is going to show you the latest updated guide for this build. Not much has changed. There's very, very little that you need to know. Just follow that build and you should be more than fine. Now, I am going to suggest some other builds for you later. We're going to go over all of my builds and what I think about them and whether or not they'll work in Mayhem. But for the meantime, I do want to talk about a couple little tips and tricks, and the main one that you're probably interested in is how to farm that tabula in 15 minutes. So the way that Mayhem is going to work is that every hour it cycles what mods are on each zone. So the idea here is that if you go to Act 1 and we look for the Tidal Islands, which is here on the coast. Now, the idea behind this is that what you're looking to do is you're looking to get the Tidal Islands to have the Rogue Exiles modifier on it. The reason why we choose the Tidal Islands in particular is because it is just a circular zone that you can clear the entirety of without missing any enemies. So in comparison to some other zones, this zone in particular will make it so that you don't miss any of the Rogue Exiles. Now keep in mind, very, very early on in this zone, it is going to be pretty rough. Like, you're gonna hit here at like level 3 or something like that, and the Rogue Exiles are absolutely gonna smack you. So what I recommend that you do is you simply just want to try to lead one Rogue Exile away, make it drop all of its gear, pick up all the items from it, and then try to slowly increase your gear over time, because the way that Rogue Exiles work is that they actually drop one of each piece of gear, and they have pretty decent rarity on them. The idea here is that when you're killing these Rogue Exiles, you're going to get lots of uniques, you're going to get lots of specific uniques, you're going to get things like Gold Rims, Wanderlusts, Tabulas, among other low-level uniques. You're slowly going to gear yourself up and be able to handle the rest of the game. So if you keep remaking this zone every time you clear it, essentially, so you'll clear the zone, you'll run back out. What you're going to do is you're going to hold Control and click the gate for the title island, and it'll open up a new instance. You just keep running this over and over and over again during that hour where this zone has Rogue Exiles. You can always press Tab and look at the map and see what mods are on here, and that will give you an idea of whether or not it's Rogue Exiles. Now, you can do this in the Mudflats as well, but the title island is significantly better if it does roll it anytime early. There's typically websites out there that'll tell you what zone has what modifier, but I haven't really gotten which ones are going to do that. I may talk about it on my stream more later, but this is going to be a great way to get your character started very early on, because this league event is going to be pretty hard. I would suggest farming that Tabula, maybe even a Gold Rim among other starting uniques, just to give yourself an extra edge while leveling. That's pretty much the only thing that you need to worry about. Just keep in mind that things like strong boxes are going to be really good for leveling. You can just run through, pop like 20 strong boxes on a very like straight map, something like Strand or something like that. You can just wait until it has strong boxes on it and then just run a bunch of Strand maps to level up very easily. And among other things like Harbingers, all of those things that pump a bunch of enemies into the zone is going to be really great for leveling. Now I want to give you some ideas about what my thoughts are about my different builds that I might suggest. I'm mainly going to be going over my builds because those are the only ones that I can really personally suggest. Out of the builds that I've made for 3.12 Heist League, I think there are a few that are of note. Now, the Impale Lancing Steel Champion I think will be fine, because Terminus S will be easy to come by. Lionized Vision shouldn't be too difficult to come by. You can buy the 5-link Prophecy, grab a Lionized Vision, and before that you can just use a Tabula. Dying Sun will be hard to get, but I wouldn't worry about that. You don't need it. You're not going to be able to get the Watcher's Eye, but I think that the main barrier to entry here is going to be the Lord of Steel Jewel. This should be extremely common because of how many uniques we're going to be finding, so I think that it'll be easy to come by, but this is really the one that you need and want to get as soon as you can for this build. It makes it like night and day for clearing with this build, having the Lord of Steel Jewel, especially early on. That's really the only thing. The tree is very straightforward. It doesn't require any crazy gear. It doesn't require anything crazy, and here you can just use Splitting Steel to level up and then swap into Lancing Steel later. I think this build will be pretty solid. You could always get rings that give you gain life on hit instead of like the Watcher's Eye, since you're not going to have that. So it should be perfectly fine, and between that and Leech you should be good. Besides that build, I also think that Impale Cyclone Champion will be okay. Once again, these items are very easy to come by. There's nothing special here. I think this one will be slightly weaker just because it's not going to be as good for clearing and bossing without getting some decent rares, but you still should be able to pull it off perfectly fine. This build does very well with very budget gear, so I think it'll be okay. I don't think the Ignite Fireball Flamewall Chieftain will be good. I would avoid that one. A big one that I do want to talk about is Ball Ending Archmage, in that I think this build will actually be very good for this league. However, what I suggest to you is that if you're going to play this build, I would suggest that you be a player that can get to maps in the first day or two. Because Pledge of Hands is going to be expensive, almost assuredly is going to be extremely expensive, and you need this to be able to survive in Mayhem League with this build. The rest of this stuff you can actually get, like things like Crown of the Inward Eye shouldn't be too insanely expensive. Omeacons you don't need. Essence Worm should be pretty cheap, and the rest of it is just rares. You don't need Dying Sun. Aziri's Promise shouldn't be too hard to get, and like we don't need the Watcher's Eye. You don't need the Intuitive Leap. It should be relatively easy as long as you can get the Pledge of Hands. But keep in mind, the Pledge of Hands is most likely going to be expensive. This drops from Legion mobs, and that means that the Mayhem event is not going to have like 20 Legion Stones or 10 Legion Stones as one of the things, so this isn't going to be a super common item. Just keep that in mind. That's the only thing that you really need to worry about. The leveling on this build is a little rough. You do need to keep that in mind as well. I suggest that you only go this if you are an experienced player. If you have played this build before in SSF or something like that, you already know what you're getting into, and you'll be fine. However, For the normal player, I'm really not going to recommend Ball Lightning Archmage. Now, COC Blade Blast Assassin, absolutely not recommended. It's going to be very, very tough to get going. You're not going to have the time to be able to build up the gear or anything like that. Poison Blade Vortex, I already told you, that is going to be my #1 suggested build. It should be very solid. You should be able to get the Obliteration Wands, no problem. These should be insanely cheap. They always are. I wouldn't worry about that too much. The rest of the stuff in this build is relatively easy to come by. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think the Pyroclast Mine Saboteur is okay. Tremor Rod is very easy to get. You don't even have to go Pyroclast Mine if you don't want to. You could go some other mine ability, something like Ball Lightning or Icicle Mine, or just any other mine ability should still be okay. My build, keep in mind, is specifically meant for Pyroclast Mine, but also you're not going to be able to get Astral Projector. This item is going to be basically unobtainable for 99.9% of people in this league. It's 1 week, and this drops from Metamorph stuff only, and it's super rare. You don't need Astral Projector for this build to work properly, but just keep that in mind. You can use any random life chest piece instead of Combs. You don't need it. Machinamits drop from Blight, I'm pretty sure, so they might be available, but they still are going to be pretty expensive early on. You don't need these, but if you can get them, they're quite good. Tremor Rod, very easy to come by early. A 5-link Tremor Rod can carry you through most of the game. This build will be amazing for bossing, even without the Astral Projector, so you don't have to worry about it too much. I think this build will be perfectly fine and is a good choice. The Toxic Rain Trickster, I'm going to say something a little controversial here, and I don't think that this build is going to be great for this league. I know that normally the Toxic Rain Trickster is a very, very good league start build. However, for this 1 week event, the problem that you're going to run into is that the main way that this build scales its damage is through a level 3 Empower, as well as the Spell Bow. And I don't think that anybody is really going to be pushing to have the crafts available in this 1 week event. You need Multi-Mod, which is from the Pale Court. You need +2 to level of Socketed Support Gems, which is from Katarina, and then you need Chaos Damage over Time Multiplier. I don't think very many people are going to have those crafts. It's not going to be easy to obtain. I can't really suggest this build. You could try to go for like a 6-link Silver Bow, and it might be okay, but there are just better options in my opinion. You could run this as like a mine variant. I know that those exist out there. I don't have any experience with them. And then also there is like the Pathfinder variant that you can always run. That one uses a Quill Bow very, very early on, so you could maybe try that if you're dead set on Toxic Rain. But my version, I wouldn't recommend fully, just because the Spell Bow is pretty hard to get a hold of. Moving on to Essence Ring Contagion. This is another one that it might be a little bit controversial, but I really am not going to recommend Essence Ring Contagion, and that's only for one reason. Bossing on Essence Ring Contagion is really rough, especially early on with no gear. Once again, you need the Spell Bow for bossing to feel okay. And we're going to be running into invasion bosses and bosses with spirits in them and all kinds of stuff like that. So I really don't think that this build is going to be a good choice for this league. For Delve, this is going to be awesome, but for this little event, not going to be one of my recommended ones. And last but not least, we have Creeping Frost. I think that Creeping Frost is actually an okay choice. This build can do bosses somewhat easily. It's not going to annihilate those bosses, but the clear is really good. The gear is very easy to get. It's very new player friendly, and it is very safe for killing bosses. I would say if you are a brand new player to this game, this is probably a good choice for this league. Otherwise, I'd probably say stick with the Poison Blade Vortex. Those are going to be my recommendations out of my builds of what I think is actually a good choice to be running in the Mayhem League. So there you have it, boys. Those are my thoughts. Poison Blade Vortex, definitely my #1 choice. I told you about the rest of the builds that I have for this league. There are a couple more that I haven't updated in some time, like the Bleebo Gladiator, among things like that. There's plenty of good builds out there, but I do heavily suggest that you play a build that you're comfortable with, and you play a build that has both good clear and both single target, or you probably are going to be a little bit upset with your choice going forward. That being said, if you're just trying to get to level 70, play literally whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. This is more so for people who want to be able to push into like some low to mid-tier maps and have not a terrible time trying to kill bosses with multiple spirits inside of them. So remember, guys, I am going to be live for the Mayhem event, so make sure that you follow me over on twitch.tv/BigDucks. I'll be live probably just a little bit before the league actually begins. I don't know how long I'm going to be streaming. It's not my normal stream time, but we will be pushing on the build. We'll try to get to 95 by the end of the event. I'm also going to be playing the Delve event and the Flashback event, so you can look forward to those as well. And if you have questions about any of my builds, or you're wondering if, say, say such and such build is going to be good for the Mayhem event, make sure to join my Discord. The link is down below. You can ask in the PoE question section. There's plenty of helpful people in there that can tell you if your build choice for the Mayhem League is complete trash or a good idea. So thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see more content like this in your feed, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.